3 weeks after the dinner, we got a letter. Not a text, not an email. A real wax-sealed envelope with thick embossed stationery. The kind you send to VIP donors or when you're trying to pretend you're still in control. Dear Elise and Chase, after much reflection, we believe this family deserves a fresh start. Let's begin again. Privately, respectfully, and without further drama. Enclosed is a gift that reflects our commitment to reconciliation. Lorraine and Clark. Inside the envelope, a deed. To the house we'd been renting for the last 4 years. Our home. In our name. Free and clear. No strings. No notes, just silence. Elise stared at it, stunned. Is this real? I checked. It was legit. Filed through a law firm Clark used for property transfers. They're trying to buy forgiveness, I said. No, she replied. They're trying to bury the mess. If we accept, they get to say they made it right. So we sat on it. Then, a week later, another message came. This time from the Prescott Foundation, Lorraine's precious charity organization, the one she ran like a royal court. They were inviting Elise to join the board. Your mother stepped down, the email said. She recommended you as her successor. Elise read it twice, then looked at me. This is their final play, she said. Give me the house, hand over the throne. Lock me into the family legacy. I asked, what do you want to do? She thought for a long time. Then said, burn it down. So she did, Elise emailed back. I decline. But I'll be attending the next board meeting as a private citizen. I have some things to say. She wasn't bluffing. That Friday, she walked into the Prescott Foundation's glass-walled conference room in a navy blue suit and steel in her eyes. I came with her, not to speak, just to record. Lorraine was there, pale, hollow, sitting in the corner like a ghost in pearls. Elise stood at the front of the room and calmly detailed how the foundation's president had spent years manipulating her family, drugging her son-in-law, using fake social accounts, destroying relationships in secret. She presented timelines, documents, even an anonymized version of the footage. She didn't yell, didn't cry, she just told the truth. By the time she finished, the board chair was white-knuckling his coffee cup and Lorraine was quietly sobbing into a monogrammed tissue. I don't want your seat, Elise said. But I want the public to know what kind of legacy you were building. That night we got an email from a major donor. We'll no longer be supporting the foundation. We stand with Elise, and just like that, Lorraine's empire, her precious polished kingdom, crumbled. She resigned the next day. No press release. No farewell gala, just gone. Elise didn't celebrate. She stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window like she was waiting for the wind to change. I thought I'd feel free, she said quietly. But I just feel empty. Because you're grieving, I told her. Not just your parents, but the idea of who you thought they were. She nodded slowly. A few days later, she got a call from Owen. We're pregnant, he said, voice trembling. Vanessa and I, we're going to have a baby. That cracked something open, Elise cried, for the first time since it all started. Not out of anger, but out of hope. We met Owen and Vanessa for lunch a week later. No parents, no scripts, just siblings rebuilding something real. That night, Elise and I walked through our new home. Our house. The one they tried to use as a leash. I want to renovate, she said suddenly. Rip out the kitchen. Burn the wallpaper, start over. Metaphorical arson, I smiled. I like it. But the real fire came a month later. Elise surprised me with something. A gallery opening. My gallery. She rented the space, printed my photos, even commissioned a huge banner for the front window that read, Chase Brantley. Through fire and focus, the place was packed. Old clients, friends, people who knew my work, but never saw the man behind it. Elise stood beside me, radiant. Then I saw them, standing at the far edge of the crowd. Clark and Lorraine. No fanfare. No greetings, just watching. Lorraine clutched a small box. Eventually, she walked up and placed it on a table beside my prints. I just wanted you to have this, she said barely above a whisper. I opened it later that night. Inside, a silver frame. My photo of Elise standing on a mountain. Ridge in Colorado, wind in her hair, wild and free. It was signed. To Chase. You won. Lorraine, I showed it to Elise. She stared at it a long time, then took it out of the frame, tore the signature off, and slipped the photo into our family album, next to one of us on our wedding day. I decide what goes in this story now, she said. And for the first time in a long, long time, she smiled. I didn't sleep that night. I parked 2 blocks down at a 24-hour diner and sat there with a black coffee I didn't drink, phone in one hand, rage burning so hot I could barely see straight. My lawyer, Mark, didn't pick up. It was 11:42 p.m., but I left him a message that would make anyone sober up real fast. Next morning, I pulled back into the driveway at 6:45. My plan? Play it cool. Let her lie to my face. Let her hang herself with her own words. She was already in the kitchen when I came in, hair damp from the shower, humming like she hadn't just screwed her boss on the living room couch. She turned and gave me this "oh, hey" smile like I was the mailman, not her husband. "You're up early," she said, pouring coffee like we were in a Folgers commercial. I stared at her for a second. "Didn't sleep much." "Oh, still sick?" she asked, voice syrupy sweet. "Poor baby." I wanted to ask if Brent whispered sweet nothings in her ear before she showered off his cologne in my bathroom, but I played dumb. She kissed my cheek. It was all I could do not to flinch. Mason came downstairs, rubbing his eyes, his Spider-Man pajama pants too short now because he keeps growing like a weed. She was packing his lunch, all smiles, like this family wasn't sitting on a live grenade. And then it happened. Brent pulled up, right in front of our house. She didn't expect me to still be there, apparently. She froze for half a second, then turned toward the door in full damage control mode. I walked to the window, stood behind the curtain, and watched the scene unfold. Brent didn't come to the door. He honked like he was picking up a date for the prom. She rushed out, waving at him with her coffee in hand, like she was living some kind of Bravo Housewives fantasy. Then he did it. He leaned out of the window and waved at my son, and Mason, being 5 and innocent, ran to the door and waved back, laughing. Brent blew him a kiss. I'm not kidding. I almost blacked out from rage. Then, as if this were some kind of joke, she let Mason run outside to say hi. She walked out with him, holding his hand like this was all normal, like it was fine for our kid to meet the guy who she screwed less than 10 feet from his room. Brent reached out and touched Mason's head, just a little tousle, like he owned him, like he was replacing me right there in my driveway. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard I thought it would snap. My teeth were clenched so tight my jaw popped. But I still didn't move, because that day, I became something else. Not just a husband, not even a father. I became a strategist. I waited for her to drive off with him. She took her own car this time, Brent trailing behind in his midlife crisis mobile. Once they were gone, I called Mark again. He picked up this time, groggy. "Mark," I said, "we're going nuclear." He didn't even ask why. He just said, "Come in." While I drove to his office, I played the audio I'd recorded the night before. I'd put my phone behind a throw pillow in the hallway. It caught everything. Her voice, Brent's voice, the names they called each other, the mocking comments about me. My favorite line? Honestly, he's like, fine. He just bores me. "Oh, Madison, you wanted excitement? Let me introduce you to a custody battle." Mark and I spent 3 hours putting together a timeline. I gave him the receipts, the recordings, a printout of her texts I'd pulled from our shared phone account. Yeah, she was sloppy, and even photos from the home security app she forgot I had access to. I still had the footage of Brent pulling into our driveway and leaving at 3:17 a.m., but I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, I left work early, stopped by Mason's daycare, and asked his teacher, Mrs. Kemper, if I could have a word. "Hey, has anyone else been dropping him off or picking him up lately?" I asked. She frowned. "Yeah, your wife's boss. I assumed it was okay. He said he was a close family friend." Family friend, that was the final nail. I called Mark from the parking lot and said, "She's letting him pick up our son." He went silent for a second. Then he said, "You want to go full scorched earth?" I didn't hesitate. Light the match. Because here's the thing. They thought they were being smart. They thought they could lie, sneak around, and play house. While I slept in the bed they defiled, they didn't realize I was wide awake, and I was just getting started. Friday morning I shaved, wore my best shirt, and dropped Mason off at daycare myself. I kissed him on the forehead, told him I loved him more than the moon and the sun combined, and walked out of that building feeling like a soldier going to war. Because today wasn't about emotion. Today was execution. Mark had pulled every string he had. By noon, the emergency custody petition was signed. My lawyer filed for sole custody, citing unsafe exposure of our child to a non-family adult during an extramarital affair. We had hard evidence, and more importantly, we had timing. Brent wasn't just her boss. He was legally her superior, meaning if this got out, his whole company could be staring down an HR disaster. But the real gut punch? Mark knew a guy in private security who moonlighted as a process server. Guy named Troy. Big dude. Quiet. Professional. The kind of guy you don't forget when he walks into a room with legal documents in his hand. I gave Troy one simple instruction. Make sure she gets served in front of Brent. It was almost too easy. Madison and Brent were scheduled to have a lunch meeting at some overpriced bistro downtown. Mark found it through her calendar app synced to our old Google account. She never disabled it. Guess she thought I was too dumb to know how tech works. Troy parked across the street and waited. When they stepped out of the building, smiling, sunglasses on like they were in a movie montage, Troy walked straight up to them. Madison Porter? She blinked, startled. Yeah? You've been served. She took the envelope and Brent tried to puff up his chest, stepping forward. Troy didn't flinch. He turned and walked away without a word. Madison opened the packet, and right there, outside the fancy restaurant where she probably planned to get wine drunk and giggle about the boring husband, she read that I was filing for full custody, citing evidence of infidelity, exposure of our child to a non-relative without permission, and moral negligence. Brent tried to read over her shoulder. She slapped the envelope against his chest and stormed back into the restaurant. She didn't even finish lunch. That evening, she came home in a hurricane of fake outrage. You served me at work? She shrieked, slamming the front door behind her. No, I said calmly, sitting at the kitchen table. I served you in public. Huge difference. She paced like a tiger in a cage. You're seriously trying to take Mason from me? I looked her dead in the eyes. You let a man you're screwing pick up our son without my knowledge. In what world do you not lose custody over that? She went pale. You're being vindictive. No, I said, standing up. I'm being a father. That shut her up. She stormed upstairs and I heard her packing bags. I didn't stop her. I wanted her to leave. The next morning, Mason asked where Mommy went. I told him she had to stay somewhere else for a little while. He just nodded and asked if I could make dinosaur-shaped pancakes. My heart shattered and swelled at the same time. By Monday, her lawyer had reached out. They wanted to negotiate. Marka smiled like a shark in court shoes. Translation, he said. They're panicking. We offered a deal. She could have supervised visitation until the court hearing. No Brent, no overnight stays, no taking Mason anywhere unless it was cleared by me first. She fought it, for about 5 minutes. Then she caved. Because the one thing Madison hadn't expected was that Brent, Prince Charming with the six-pack and the leased BMW, bailed the moment things got legally messy. Yup. He dumped her, said it was too complicated. I heard this straight from Mark, who got it from her lawyer, who apparently got it directly from Madison after she showed up to his office sobbing. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was numb. She came by the house a few days later to pick up some clothes. She stood in the doorway holding a duffel bag, eyes red. Mason still asks about me? She mumbled. Every day, I said. But I don't lie to him. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You're really doing this? She whispered. You already did it, I said. I'm just cleaning it up. She left without another word. But the real storm hadn't even hit yet, because the hearing was coming, and I still had one card left to play. The security footage from inside the house. The courtroom was cold. Not just in temperature. It had that sterile, hollow feel of a place where lives get rearranged and no one walks out the same. Madison sat 2 rows ahead, dressed like she thought this was a job interview, hair pulled tight, heels that didn't quite hide her nerves. She didn't look at me. Good. I didn't come for eye contact. I came for war. Mark sat beside me, a quiet predator in a suit. He had a yellow legal pad with 6 tabs, but I knew he wasn't planning to flip much. We had 2 weapons. That was all we needed. Judge Kramer, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, walked in and looked like she had already seen every dirty trick in the divorce playbook twice. Madison's lawyer opened with the usual fluff. She was a devoted mother, regretful of recent mistakes, and wanted what's best for the child. Then it was Mark's turn. Your Honor, the respondent knowingly exposed a 5-year-old child to an unrelated adult male with whom she was engaged in an extramarital affair. This occurred in the marital home without the petitioner's knowledge, while the petitioner was out of town. The judge raised an eyebrow. You have proof? Mark stood up straight like he was presenting a magic trick. Yes, Your Honor. Security camera footage. And audio. That got Madison's attention. She turned in her seat, eyes wide, face drained of color. Mark handed over a flash drive. The court clerk uploaded it to the screen facing the judge. The room dimmed slightly as the screen flickered on. I didn't watch it again. I'd seen it enough, but the judge did. The footage played in silence. Brent entering the house. Madison leading him in, laughing. Her kissing him before they even made it past the kitchen. Them moving toward the couch. Her climbing on top of him. And then, the blanket falling off the couch. Her voice, moaning. Brent's voice, laughing. Judge Kramer pressed pause. She didn't say anything for a full 10 seconds. Then, is this time-stamped? Yes, Your Honor, Mark said. It took place at approximately 11:45 p.m., 3 nights before my client returned from a business trip. Their 5-year-old son was asleep in the room directly above. The judge looked at Madison. Madison looked at the floor. Mark wasn't done. He handed over a transcript next. We also have audio, Your Honor, captured from a hallway device. With the court's permission, she nodded. And the courtroom filled with Madison's voice. He's so boring. I swear I'd rather watch paint dry. If it weren't for Mason, I'd have left him years ago. Then Brent's voice. You say that every time, Madison. Well, maybe next time I mean it. The judge raised her hand to cut the audio. Enough. Her voice was quiet but sharp. I didn't even look at Madison. I could feel her falling apart behind me. I didn't need to see it. Judge Kramer took a breath, leaned forward. I've seen a lot of bad decisions made during divorce proceedings, Ms. Porter. But what you did, inviting a man into your home while your son slept upstairs, allowing that man to interact with him without his father's knowledge, and then lying about it repeatedly. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. Madison tried to speak. Your Honor. No, be quiet. She sat back, mouth open but silent. The judge looked at me. Mr. Porter, what is your current petition? Sole legal and physical custody. Supervised visitation only. And you're prepared to provide a stable home? Full-time care? Yes, ma'am, she nodded. Then it is so ordered. Boom, just like that. Gavel down. Madison looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off, grabbed her bag, and rushed out like the building was on fire. Mark turned to me and grinned. That was beautiful. I didn't smile. I wasn't celebrating. I was grieving, because, no matter how righteous it felt, this wasn't a win. Mason didn't get to have 2 loving parents under one roof. He didn't get Sunday morning cartoons in bed with both of us. He didn't get birthday parties where mom and dad stand side by side behind the cake, but he got me, and I would never let him down. That night, I sat on the edge of his bed while he slept, brushing his hair off his forehead, watching him breathe. All the rage, the betrayal, the courtroom drama, it faded in that moment. All that mattered was him, and that he'd never have to question who stood by him when everything fell apart. But even as peace settled in, a new thought crept into my mind. If Madison was desperate now, how far would she go to get revenge? Because people don't just lose everything quietly. A few weeks after the court hearing, life started to resemble something close to normal. Mason and I settled into our new rhythm, weekday breakfasts with messy oatmeal smiles, movie nights under blanket forts, and quiet bedtime stories where he always insisted on one more page. It was healing. Not perfect, but real. Madison, though, she was unraveling. She'd show up to her supervised visits with makeup smudged, eyes puffy like she hadn't slept, hair that looked like it hadn't seen a brush in days. She barely spoke to the socials, worker assigned to monitor her. But around Mason, she'd snap into a fake version of herself. Overly sweet, almost desperate. It wasn't genuine. It was performative, and Mason could feel it. He didn't run into her arms anymore. He clung to the social worker at drop-off, giving Madison cautious side hugs and asking when he'd be going back to Daddy's house. I knew it was eating her alive. Then came the Thursday when everything snapped. It was a routine visit, 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. at the Child Welfare Center. The room had toys, beanbags, coloring books, and cameras in every corner. I usually spent that hour sitting in the lobby, working on my laptop or reading case files from my own job. But that day, she didn't come out at 3 or, at first, the receptionist assumed she was running late. I waited another 5 minutes, then 10. Finally, the door to the visitation room opened, only it wasn't Madison who came out. It was the supervisor, pale, shaking. "She took him," she said, breathless. "She grabbed Mason and ran out the side exit during cleanup time. I didn't see it until I turned around and he was gone. My blood went cold. I didn't panic. I went into battle mode. I called Mark on speaker while the staff scrambled to contact the police. He immediately initiated an Amber Alert report and got in touch with a judge from the custody hearing. Within 20 minutes, every cop in a 30-mile radius had Mason's picture, a description of Madison's car, and Brent's last known address. That was the first place they checked. But Brent didn't even answer the door. He was done with her, completely off the radar since the hearing. Madison had nowhere to go. But desperation does stupid things to people. At 6:12 p.m., an officer called me personally. They'd found her car in a grocery store parking lot, a town over, alone. No Madison. No Mason. My knees gave out. I collapsed, into the bench outside the visitation center, phone trembling in my hand. "She left the car?" "Yes, sir. Engine's cold. No sign of the boy. We've got dogs tracking her scent." I couldn't breathe. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just some angry mom lashing out. Madison had snapped, full break from reality. At 7:03 p.m., a retired trucker called 911. Said he saw a woman acting weird with a child behind a gas station dumpster, trying to cut his hair with kitchen scissors. Said the kid was crying. Said it didn't feel right. It was Mason. When the cops rolled up, she screamed that I had stolen him from her, tried to run, tripped over her own purse, and fell into the mud. They cuffed her. Hard. Mason was unharmed, shaken, confused, but not physically hurt. He clung to the female officer who found him like she was his guardian angel. I got to the station an hour later. When I walked into the room where they were keeping him, he looked up with tear-stained cheeks and ran into my arms like the world was ending. "Daddy," he sobbed, "Mommy tried to take me. She said we were going to live in a castle. I held him so tight I thought my heart might stop. I wanted to scream. I wanted to kill her. But I didn't. I stayed calm. Because Mason needed peace, not more fire." Madison was charged with parental kidnapping, violating a custody order, and resisting arrest. Her lawyer didn't even try to fight it. I was granted a restraining order immediately, and the judge modified custody again. 0 contact. No visits. No phone calls. Not even letters. It was done. Or so I thought, because the very next day, a strange envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a USB drive, and a single note. If you thought that was the worst of it, you really don't know your wife. It wasn't signed. It wasn't her handwriting, and I hadn't told anyone about what happened, not even my parents. My stomach twisted. Someone was watching me, and I hadn't even begun to understand how deep the lies went. I stared at the USB like it might explode in my hand. Madison was in custody. She wasn't mailing packages from jail. So who the hell sent this? Mark ran it through a secure laptop. No malware. Just a single file labeled Home Truths, MP4. The video started with a shaky phone cam. A man's voice whispered, "This is just in case something happens to me." Then the lens tilted, and there he was. Brent, gaunt, sweaty, hiding in what looked like a dingy motel bathroom. "I made a mistake," he mumbled. "I thought she just wanted to screw around. I didn't know she was going to go full psycho. She said she wanted me to help her disappear. Said if I didn't go along, she'd tell everyone I hurt her son." He held up a hand. It was bandaged. "She stabbed me with a steak knife, man. A steak knife. Said I'd ruined everything and cost her the future she deserved. I'm out. I'm not dying over this." He ended the video with one last line. "She said there's still one card to play. Said the fire would set her free." I barely slept that night. The next day, I did something I'd sworn I'd never do again. I called Madison. I had to look her in the eyes and hear what she'd say. The jail set up a video call. She looked like hell, hair stringy, bruised under her eyes. But when she saw me, she smiled like nothing had happened. "Hi, babe," she said, voice syrupy and cracked. "Cut the act. What fire?" Her smile didn't falter. But her eyes, they went dead, cold. Sometimes you have to burn the past to start over. Click. She ended the call. I raced home. Mason was safe. Thank God he was with my sister for the weekend. But as I pulled into my driveway, I saw it. Smoke, a thin, gray column twisting up from the back of the house. I ran through the front door and into the kitchen, lungs seizing from the smoke already curling at the ceiling. It wasn't a full blaze, just smoldering. Someone had tried to set the garage on fire. But they were sloppy. The gas canister had spilled. The flame caught on old insulation and choked out, leaving only char marks and a blackened workbench. The fire department confirmed it was arson, but there was no security cam in the garage. I'd never thought I'd need one. The message was clear. She may have been locked up, but she wasn't done. I thought about that USB again. Brent had said he was afraid, said she had one more move. Maybe he wasn't the only one she'd manipulated. That night, I sat in Mason's room, watching him sleep. Innocent, quiet, unaware that the world around him had become a twisted chessboard. I made a decision. No more waiting. No more defense. I hired a private investigator. Within a week, we had more. Madison had been planning this for years. Fake bank accounts, digital burner phones, chat logs with people she called her backup plans. One of them, some guy named Rick, had wired her money from a crypto wallet tied to a stolen identity. Another one, a retired cop from out of state, who'd advised her on custody law. She hadn't snapped overnight. She'd built the madness, brick by brick, so I did the only thing left. I exposed her. I leaked the Brent video anonymously to a local news station. They ran a segment called Mom's Secret Life, the suburban scandal that rocked a custody battle. It blew up. Every dirty thread got dragged into the open. The reporter dug up her sealed juvenile record. Turns out this wasn't her first time using fire to solve a problem. At 16, she'd burned down a classmate's shed after a breakup. She got labeled online as the Pyro Mom. And Brent, he, vanished. But not before someone leaked his mugshot from a bar fight in Texas. The internet did what it always does. And me? I got full custody, cemented. Legal name change for Mason approved, new school, fresh start. We moved 3 states away. Quiet. House, big yard. Cameras everywhere. Sometimes Mason asks about her. I tell him the truth in pieces he can handle. I tell him she got sick, and she made some bad choices, but that he's safe now, that he'll always be safe. But late at night, when the world's quiet, I wonder if she's done, or if one day a different package will arrive. A letter, a whisper, a bomb under my calm little world, because people like Madison? They don't end. They linger, like smoke, like a fire that never quite dies, and I'll be ready, because when she finally strikes again, I won't be the one burning. She will. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought, or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.